Hey everybody. The last couple days we've talked about adding and subtracting real numbers. I bet you probably could have guessed what's coming next. It's multiplying. When we multiply real numbers, just like when we add and subtract, one of the first things that we want to figure out for our answer is what is the sign going to be? Is it going to be positive or negative, right? You've probably learned this rule before, so this is probably review. To find the sign of a product, we look at the signs of the two numbers that we're multiplying. If they have the same sign, the answer is going to be positive. So positive 3 times positive 4 gives us positive 12. Or if they're both negative, negative 6 times negative 3, we get positive 18. Okay, so same signs, positive product. If the signs are different, a positive times a negative is going to give us a negative, and a negative times a positive will always give us a negative. Okay, so this is very important because it tells us the first thing that we need to know is our sign going to be positive or negative. As usual, we're going to take a look at a couple examples to see exactly what we're talking about. Let's start with some decimals. Let's say we have negative 3.6. We're going to multiply that by 5.2. Okay, negative times a positive. I already know what my product is going to be because I have different signs. I'm going to have a negative product. We multiply decimals the same way we multiply any number. I'm going to ignore the signs for now because I know my answer is going to be negative. So I'm just going to multiply the absolute values of these numbers. So 3.6 times 5.2, right? Now, I multiply 6 times 2, I get 12, so I write the 2. I carry the 1 over here, and now I have 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. In my next row, I add a 0 as a placeholder for that first digit. Now I do 6 times 5, that's 30. So I'm going to put a 0 here. I'm going to cross out this 1, and now I'm carrying a 3 from the 30. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 3 gives me 18. Now I add straight down, just like I would do with any multiplication problem. Now to figure out where the decimal goes, we have to look at the total number of decimal places in the problem. I have one decimal place in 3.6. There's one in 5.2. So because I have two decimal places in the problem, my answer also has to have two decimal places, 18.72. And remember I said my answer was going to be negative, so I'm going to write negative 18.72 and put a box around it to show that it's my final answer. Let's try another one. Let's try 7 times negative 3/5 times 4/3. So remember our order of operations tells us to go from left to right. Right? We're going to start here. We're going to work our way this way with our multiplication. So first thing I'm going to do is multiply 7 times negative 3/5. Now remember when we were working with fractions, realize I can write 7 as 7/1 times negative 3/5 times 4/3. So 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. 1 times 5 is 5. Remember, with multiplication with fractions, we just multiply straight across. 7 times negative 3, 1 times 5. And then I need to multiply negative 21/5 by 4/3. Now here is an example of a time when I can do what we call cross-canceling. I know 3 goes into negative 21. So I can divide 21 by 3 and get 7. I can divide 3 by 3 and get 1. So now I have negative 7 times 4. That's going to give me negative 28. And I have 5 times 1, which gives me 5. And there I have my final answer. So those two were all the examples that we're going to have for tonight, but I do want to cover some basic properties of multiplication that are really important to understand. The first is the commutative property. So we talked about this with addition, right? The commutative property says that the order doesn't matter. So this only applies to addition and multiplication. A times B is going to give us B times A. they are the same, right? 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Negative 5 times 4 is also negative 20. The associative property tells us that the way we group numbers in a product doesn't change the product. And this works as long as all we're doing is multiplying. So if I do A times B first and then times C, I get the same answer as doing B times C first and then times A. So in our example here, negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. Negative 14 times 4 is negative 56. We get the same answer over here if we do 7 times 4 and get 28 times negative 2 is also negative 56. The identity property is similar to the additive identity property, but remember, in addition, 0 is the additive identity. Remember, A plus 0 equals A. In multiplication, 1 is the identity. A times 1 equals A. Multiply anything by 1, it doesn't change the value. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. The property of 0, the 0 property of multiplication, says that if we multiply any number by 0, we get 0. Negative 3 times 0 equals 0. I can put any number here in place of this negative 3 and we would get the exact same result. And then the property of negative 1. If we multiply any number by negative 1, we get its opposite. Negative 2 times negative 1 equals positive 2. Negative 3 times negative 1 equals positive 3. If I did 9 times negative 1, I would get the opposite of 9, which is negative 9. So make sure you get all of these properties down. These are going to come in really handy tomorrow, and you're going to want to have them in your notes. Have a good night. I will see you guys tomorrow.